Our first reading this morning is Revelation 7, 9 through 17. The author envisions for the glory of all the saints who have endured. After this I looked, and there was a great multitude which no one could count, from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, robed in white, with palm branches in their hands. They cried out in a loud voice, saying, "Salvation belongs to our God who is seated on the throne and to the Lamb." And all the angels stood before the throne and around the elders and the four living creatures, and they fell on their faces before the throne and worshiped God, singing, "Amen. Blessing and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might be to our God forever and forever. Amen." Then one of the elders addressed me, saying, "Who are these, robed in white, and where have they come from?" I said to him, "Sir, you are the one that knows." Then he said to me, "These are those who have come out of a great ordeal. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. For this reason, they are before the throne of God and worship him day and night within his temple. And the one who is seated on the throne will shelter them. They will hunger no more. They will thirst no more. The sun will not strike them, nor any scorching heat. For the Lamb at the center of the throne will be their shepherd, and he will guide them to the springs of the water of life, and God will wipe away every tear from their eye." Our second reading this morning comes from Matthew 5, 1 through 12. Jesus begins the Sermon on the Mount with the Beatitudes. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up to the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you."
Off the western coast of Scotland lies an island community called Iona. For centuries, it was the center of Gaelic monasticism, and today is known for its tranquility and its natural environment. It is a holy place, a place where many go for spiritual retreat and renewal. They say it is a thin place, a place where the veil between heaven and earth is lifted, and you can get a glimpse of eternity. The ancient Celts and later Christians built worship sites at thin places. Today, even among ruins, you can sense the presence of the divine as boundaries of time and space fade away, and you know you are in the very presence of God. I come from a thin place, West Virginia, almost heaven, you know. Standing on those West Virginia hills sometimes feels like you are on holy ground, which explains why West Virginians don't wear shoes. Another thin place for me is the Outer Banks of North Carolina, where the Atlantic meets our eastern shores, and you can lose yourself in the rhythm of the waves and the infinity of the view. Today, as we remember our saints who dwell in the world beyond this one, I invite you to think about your own thin places, places where you see glimpses of heaven. We find help in the reading from Revelation. The author self-identifies as John, and now I have it on good authority, that it was not the Apostle John, but a prophet who was active in Asia Minor at the time of the writing. I think he must have known about thin places, for he writes of mystery and wonder and gives us a glimpse of the holy, indeed of heaven itself. Here in chapter 7 of Revelation, we get a different picture of heaven than in later chapters, depicting a city with golden streets and jasper walls and a river that flows from the throne of God. Here, the picture is not so much about the physical appearance of a city, but about its inhabitants. You may be familiar with the book, The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. Mitch Albom's best-selling novel in which an amusement park maintenance man dies and meets 5 people who will help him understand the meaning of his life. We may be surprised by the people John says we will meet in heaven. Earlier in the chapter, before today's reading begins, he talks about all those from the 12 tribes of Israel, 144,000 of them. Nora Tubbs Tisdale, in preaching on this passage, commented, "That's a whole lot of Jews." And it reminds us Christians that, as Paul puts it in Romans, we are the branches who have been grafted onto this tree of faith that extends back far further than we. But John doesn't stop there. He goes on to include people gathered from every single nation and tribe and language on earth, standing before the throne of God and worshiping. How wonderful is that? I have to wonder what this passage says to those who would exclude from heaven those who worship or believe differently, or call God by a different name than they. I think they may be surprised. And even for us who think we are inclusive, according to John's vision, heaven may be even more so. And when John lifts the veil and we get a glimpse above it, we may be surprised by the healing we see there. Not just the infirmities we know our loved ones had. Heaven is also a place where the pain of injustice will finally be healed, and the wrongs that have been visited upon all of humanity will be made right. The gospel reading for All Saints this year is Matthew's version of the Beatitudes, the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus went up on the mountain, the place of special proclamation, and taught his disciples within earshot of the crowds, who were amazed at his teaching. In Jesus' day, Beatitudes were proverb-like common sense sayings. They are based on the Greek word translated as blessed, referring to God's favor. It could also be translated as honored. Beatitudes are not commandments, nor formulas for happiness. They are blessings, conferring favor on those who suffer and strive to do what is good and right. These verses from Matthew, together from those with Revelation, remind us not only that of the saints who have suffered in this life, but also of all who have suffered injustice or martyrdom through the centuries, that they will all be vindicated, as the entire social order is healed and God wipes away all tears. I want to focus in particular on one of the Beatitudes, the second one, which in verse 4 reads, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." Now, in Jesus' day, in times of economic struggle and oppression of the poor, there were many who mourned the injustice of a system that favored the rich and powerful. In that context, this beatitude is about justice. But today, as we sit here grieving the loss of loved ones who have been an integral part of our lives and our church, we hear these words in a different context. We hear them in the context of mourning those losses and needing comfort. And Jesus assures us that we will be blessed and comforted. As we gather here on this All Saints Sunday, this is a thin place, a place where we can get a glimpse of heaven, where we stand on holy ground, a place where the veil between heaven and earth feels very thin. For us, this is holy ground, where we can take off our shoes and share in mystical communion with the saints who have gone before us. Will you pray with me? Gracious God, as we remember all those who have gone before us, give us a glimpse of heaven and bless us with comfort in all our times of mourning. Amen.